As we begin on our process of awareness, having been chosen by the real universal guides, as they recognise risk-taking potential and the spark of courage required for such a journey, we may not fully appreciate what we will have to go through. The personal self, at any rate, will latch onto and pursue what it does based on its incessant need to chase thrills, for it always is indulging its emotional astral vehicle predominantly. The vast majority of individuals, the length and breadth of creation, will be motivated mainly from the need to satiate their ever-hungry astral vehicles. The want for emotional stimulation seems limitless. Imagine millions of lifetimes where the main feature of them has been indulging in this nature. It boggles the literal mind. The vehicles, of course, are the means by which we create experience for ourselves. As we activate their idea-generating mechanics, our life unfolds before us through the creational process of cause and effect, or what most may term karma. Experiences are, of course, an essential aspect of our waking up process, and at a certain point, when we have perhaps exhausted all avenues of created experience, or at least enough of them that we then stretch and reach for more, a vague inkling, an intuitive nudge perhaps, that there is something beyond what we have always known, then the guides may decide to step in and provide the golden opportunity. Throughout my life, prior to the new presentation, I often would have dreams of searching for something, of wandering into wildernesses, and somehow knowing there was something I sought, but not having the ability to find it. I suspect this would be true of many, as they exhaust the array of experiences possible. I suspect this would be true of many, as they exhaust the array of experiences possible. They not only may dabble in the magical arts, but will undoubtedly have dreams of this nature. Dreams of searching for something beyond that which they've known, but that seems hidden from them. Their motivation for involving themselves in magical paths and things of this nature will be initially from an emotional, astral, gratifying reason, but underlying this will be the urge, the nudge from the intuitive self, the ethereal vehicle, to find something else. The ethereal intuitive aspect is the closest thing to real awareness, as it is, literally speaking, the least dense layer of our created self, and so the veil between it and the real self must be the thinnest. Little wonder, then, that it is the ethereal vehicle that is best positioned to receive intuitive nudges, which would be the real self trying to get the attention of its created personal self. The body vehicles or selves below become rather convoluted with ideas, considerations, then emotions, to the point where very little information, if any at all, can reach us from the real self. Everything, of course, is. All the body vehicles are rolled into one, and exist in this very new moment. So it's not a case that we must move or travel into the fifth level and our ethereal vehicle to access our intuition. We must just stop generating emotion and thought ideas from the mental and astral vehicles, or they certainly will muddy the waters and make it quite the task for anything of intuition sent from the real self to reach our personal selves here in the physical. So very likely the want to play with magical systems was sparked by an intuitive drive, as generally the personal self is very content to do what it has always done. The personal self is rather basic and rudimentary, its main drive being, of course, sexual gratification, in whatever form that may take for the individual. Everyone generally being locked into their physical astral vehicles, then it's very inconceivable that from this limited viewpoint an individual wouldn't see any merit in doing anything else. For only if the personal self exhausts whatever it is that caters for its sexual needs will it likely try a different tactic, or failing that, will reach for magics, mysticism, meditations, astral projecting, etc. We can see then that in days of old this would explain why there was more interest in these kinds of esoteric, beyond the normal thrill-seeking pursuits. If the main source of thrill-seeking stemmed from sexual gratification, then, as you can imagine, this was vastly dependent on the availability of the source of this gratification, and even if readily available, it would all get rather samey after a while. And of course, circumstances dictate that not everyone will be able to indulge this astral drive back in those days. Things were certainly far better designed for the controllers in this astral satiating regard, so of course the likelihood that far more would turn to alternative pursuits in comparison to today. For in the technological age ushers in a whole new source of astral indulging. Thrill-seeking no longer is restricted to what was the only means such could be indulged before technology. Peoples now, regardless of their circumstances, can access technology, unless their situation is very destitute, and of course this is becoming more and more the case. Nevertheless, individuals potentially have a far greater array and spectrum of technology-orientated indulgences that cater for the emotional self. Even simply watching television will satisfy the astral emotional self, the computer games, etc. Any overstimulation of a vehicle, the astral emotional, as is predominant, will guarantee cause and effect experiential consequences that keep people not only in a constant state of reincarnational recycling, but ensures they never can go beyond the astral life level. To move our focus of self further into the life levels requires recognition. It requires that one conquer or get under control over that which prevents them from doing so. In other words, to get a hold of the astral emotional self and control its insatiable wants and the ideas it generates. The world controllers, the dark forces, are limited in their awareness, but understand enough of creational mechanics that they are more than adept at keeping individuals locked in creation, assuming they can attract and glean their agreement to be thus restricted. They may well have panicked to a degree when many individuals in the past began magical exploration due to a lack of variety of emotional stimulation. They would have little to fear, it seems, as perhaps the consciousness of humanity, by and large, hadn't developed enough. Most hadn't had enough experience in creation yet, that they were likely to be afforded an opportunity to become aware of and recognize the ease. The consciousness of a species also dictates if the ears can have a presence in creation, and if it can position an individual willing to be the emissary of the ears and share the message of its possibility. Everything is based on agreement, free will and consciousness, as to if an individual can be positioned in creation and the is-light allowed to shine. If the consciousness of a species is such that they are not ready for such an opportunity, this is tantamount to a lack of agreement. For it's likely the ears will have guides approach individuals on the real side at higher life levels to ascertain willingness and agreement, and if found lacking or non-existent, it would be impossible for the ears or an emissary of it to feature in the experiences of the unconscious mass of the species. So yes, individuals may start to dabble, perhaps based on the personal sense of having exhausted experience, exhausted the limited array of thrill-seeking, emotional astral stimulation that is available. But very few would have been in a position to be ready for the super knowledge of the true reality. Nevertheless, throughout history, evidently there was enough agreement, enough people ready, that individuals from the ears could squeeze through the resistant block of stubborn literalism and establish themselves to assist some who are willing to take the risk. Jesus, Pythagoras, and surely others throughout our history as examples. And quite the risk indeed, as anything indulged in beyond what was deemed acceptable in history's past would certainly bring the sword of religious indignation upon one's neck. And that was certainly how the controllers would have discouraged such magical pursuits, witchcraft, etc., fear being the principal tool by which the dark forces maintain their stranglehold on a species, and that, if agreed with, keeps everyone suppressed, tap-lined, and locked into the matrix. Easy enough then to execute anyone who became a witch or a wizard, usually on the basis of some justifiable reason, generally a religious one, of how it was devilry, etc., even though you can guarantee that anything a slave would indulge in, a controller or elite individual would be doing, and more besides. The laws of restriction, after all, are for the slaves, and generally as a further means to keep them locked down, and the laws don't apply to the slave masters.